Yes, sir. First we gonna rock, then we gonna roll, then we let it pop. Go, let it go. Running gonna give it to you. We gonna give it to you. Yes, sir. Put them X's up. First show since the passing of the legend. So we gonna salute X. Salute to Black Rob as well. Yeah, we losing too many legends, man. But we gonna remember them. We gonna keep them alive in our hearts, man. But we also go keep alive one of the best shows talking ball on this hit internets. That is the Runnin with WARR show. Back at it after a break from last week. I am your host, Kyle Means, back at it after a couple weeks off myself. I had to, take care of some personal things. But I'm back in the mix and in the mood to talk some ball with my guys here. You see up there at the top, Gabriel Wilkins, back at it again. Of course, he's part of the rotation. If y'all don't know, he's official runner. And Josh Hicks and Drew, all the down in the post as they tend to do. We play positionless ball here. I'm running with WARR, but we like I said, we back at it, man. It's been a couple weeks. Playoff hunt, getting as fiery as ever. Teams are battling for position, and Chicago here. We thought we was gonna get a little more of that type of action than we were, that we've gotten in the meantime. Since the trade deadline, energized. I think that was maybe the last time I've been on the show when right after the trade. And it hasn't been much going on since then. So we're gonna delve into that definitely. Like I say, just what the hell is up with the Bulls right now. But we're gonna talk about some good things as well. Steph Curry, talk about some of the good teams that are maintaining their position and doing well in both the East and West, of course. Maybe delve into some other spots as well. The Sky continue to look good in the offseason, picking up Lexi Brown this week. A lot of interesting things going on in the world of basketball. But first off, I'm trying to establish this on the show, the tip-off segment here at the top of the show. Any quick hits, anything that jump out to you guys that amongst the NBA or elsewhere in the world of basketball, with anything that's on you guys' mind?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a tweet that I saw earlier today that I passed along to the crew regarding maybe Jamal Crawford being a Hall of Famer. That's actual discussion.
Okay.
So
I know that's something you ride with.
Yeah, I mean that's my guy. I love Jamal. I literally, especially in college, actually tried to model my game off of him when I was playing college basketball. That's part of what they called me when I was hooping. So because of that, it was like, Jamal's always been my guy. But you want to talk about Hall of Fame, man. I mean, you got to have a certain standard when you talk about who gets inducted into the elites of the elite, right? And as much as Jamal is my guy, and I love Jamal, I mean, he ain't got no all-stars to his resume. He ain't got a championship in his resume. He will always go down as arguably the best six man ever to play the game. But when you talk about Hall of Famers, they have at least all-star appearances. When you talk about Hall of Famers, they at least have championships. When you talk about Hall of Famers, they have at least all NBA status. You have and things of that sort. Jamal doesn't have it on his resume. So is he gonna go down as one of the best players on as far as six man coming off the bench or being known as an elite scorer or ball handler with arguably the best handles in the game? Yes, most definitely. You definitely got to give him his props for that. However, you're going to talk about a Hall of Fame status. I'm going to slowly roll a little bit on that one, guys. And it's hard for me to say that because I'm such a huge Jamal Crawford fan.
Yeah.
Since he got into the league playing for the Bulls as a rookie, leading up to the different teams that he's played for throughout his years, And the dude can still ball. Don't get it twisted. Jamal can still ball. He did end his, I want to say 2 seasons ago with the Phoenix Suns. His last game with the Phoenix Suns, he had 51 points. I mean, dude can still ball. But you want to talk about Hall of Fame status, man? Yeah. I'm going to slow your roll on that one, man. Y'all got to slow down. Especially since now they're talking about Jamal Crawford being since in that discussion or in that tweet, you know, in the comments, I think I saw someone else say, oh, yeah, Jamal's a Hall of Famer. And if so is Lou Williams. And if you want to compare those two, I can't compare Lemon Pepper to, you know, somebody like Jamal Crawford. You want to talk about Hall of Fame status right there. I can't do that. To me, I just can't do that. So I don't know, man. It's nice to have some discussions like that, but let's slow the roll a little bit on what you consider a Hall of Fame, because Hall of Fame is a whole different type of level and status when you're talking about the elites of the elites, especially when you're talking about all-stars and championships. I mean, you got to keep the standard, and Jamal hasn't fulfilled that type of standard, even though I love that type of talent that he brings to the table and what he's brought to the league for so long and so many years.
I appreciate that, you know, that analysis there, because it shows that you're a measured, you know, a viewer of the game. Because a lot of people, especially online, they get out and they root themselves in their stands, and they just, you know, go off on tangents and put out bad ideas and bad opinions just because they have, you know, they have a particular fondness for a player or a certain type of play or whatever. Like I said, you know, like you say, and I know this because I've edited a lot of your writing to this, and I've engaged in discussions with you to this degree. Like, you know, he you know, Josh really messes with Crawford, with, you know, but, you know, to be able to admit that he's not quite that level of player, you know, that means that you care about the game more so than your opinion or even your favorite player, and that's a good thing. And, you know, to that, you know, you mentioned players like Crawford, you know, and Lou Williams, and there's plenty others out there. I think to that degree we should have a hood basketball Hall of Fame. You know, you know, don't put it in Springfield, put it in, you know, one of the you know, one of the hoods here in America. You know, we got, you know, I don't know where we have it in Chicago, man. We have it in one of the parks or something, man. But I don't know. We could have it, you know, in New York at the Rucker or something, like just those players that, like, say, that the hood loves, that gets those you know, that our type of basketball fans and appreciate overall. You know, that would definitely be something that Jamal Crawford would be in, among others, you know, and then Lou Will definitely representing Atlanta. So, yeah, like I said, Jamal Crawford, an amazing player. He should be in the league right now, like you say, Josh. But no, he's not. He doesn't belong in Springfield, not with his resume as it is.
But you know what's crazy with Jamal Crawford? Like, he's only about, I want to say, 35 to 40 points away from 20,000 points. And I don't think he's been coming off the bench as long as he has. Close. And him and Lou are probably like up there, 1 and 2 is like top all-time bench scorers. Overall amount of six-man awards they have between them. I mean, I think they got an argument. They're definitely not first ballot. And if it was a hood basketball, you can't have one without Jamal Crawford. The dude loves basketball. He has his own program in Seattle and so forth that he's been running for years, and he's well respected across the game with guys from his era or older than him and even current era today. But man, that would be an interesting argument and conversation to have, I think, at least 5 to 6 years down the line, when, you know, the end of the book is officially written and it's time to assess, because he has a very hard argument. If a guy like Bobby Jones could get from in the 80s, who was a great player in his own right, I think Jamal and guys like, they got arguments too.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely argue all. That's one of the great things about these type of discussions. If you can formulate an argument, if you know the game well enough, and you know the history like Gabe does, and you recognize that there are some borderline people in the hall from every era. Put up your argument and let's see where we can put these players. That's the point of the Hall of Fame, to categorize and contextualize who were the greatest players of the game, who made the impact on the most impact on the game. And I wonder, I think with players, you mostly measure them by what they did on the court. With the Springfield, you can actually measure players by what they did in high school, college, and the pros. But there also are people who've contributed to the game in a general sense. And Gabe brings up something like the Seattle Pro-Am, which has become so associated with Crawford. I wonder if something like that could be factored in with a player's overall impact on the game of basketball. Internationally, too, as when we talk about international players, the Olympic play and international play, FIBA and stuff like that, often gets factored in as well. So, there's definitely a lot of directions you can go when you talk about a player's impact in their final resting place as a legacy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you talk about what Gabe's mentioned, I guess the argument that people like us should be able to have is, can you tell the storyline or tell any type of story from an impact perspective that this player can bring that's worthy of the Hall of Fame? And Jamal Crawford does, in some sense. You want to talk about his handle? He's one of the people that implemented not just the sham guy, but the dribble between your legs behind the back twice, leave your player completely clueless and defenseless. Especially when you talk about the handles and his performances in the game. That's what made Jamal Crawford's game pop out. Aside from the fact that from breaking his ankles, he was able to score the way that he was able to score. If you really can make an argument that prior to Kyrie Irving coming to the league, he was arguably the Kyrie Irving. When you talk about a combo guard perspective of being able to run the point guard, but also have the handles that he has, and shoot the ball and score the ball at the efficient rate he's been able to do. And what makes it even more crazy is he did it from the bench. He did it as a starting guard. He did it as a bench player and a sixth man. And he's been able to excel, especially on those good teams. When you talk about the legendary Atlanta Hawks teams, when you're talking about the Clippers, Lob City teams, he had a positive role and impact on the game during those eras that really made his name and his brand overall with his skill set stand out. I want to say he's the only player to score 50 plus points on 4 different teams. That's something that's part of the story that can get you to the Hall of Fame, because it's a story that not many people are able to fulfill. It's not a story that not many people can add to, and he's one of the few people to do that, on top of the 6-man winning awards, on top of redefining what it is to really be a hybrid guard or a combination point guard. That's like Gabe said, that's actually a tough argument to have when you talk about enlisting his name in the Hall of Fame. Is it going to be enough, though? That's my question. That's what gets me. Is it going to be enough? As a fan of Jamal Crawford and his game, and how much I love what he brought to the league, is that going to be enough to get him in a pool where eliteness from an all-star, all-NBA, scoring records and championships and things of that sort are all things that are currently against him right now? And it's an interesting fact that Gabe brought up, the fact that he's only a few hundred points away from being a 20,000 point scorer, which is legendary. That's awesome. Is that going to be enough to get him in the hump, though? I don't think that's enough to get him through. But yeah, Gabe's right. That's a pretty tough argument to have, considering you can't tell an NBA storyline, especially when it comes to different eras of basketball, without Jamal Crawford's name in it.
Yeah. That's the type of thing that type of argument that you produce, Gabe and Josh, that's the type of stuff that nuanced, observers of the game can provide. I don't know how much nuance we provide with the Hall of Fame. It's usually a cut and dry thing, but I think in the end, like you said at the beginning, Josh, it's hard to argue for that level for him, given the lack of all-star appearances, the lack of championship appearances, and of course, championships. It's interesting you mentioned like a Kyrie. Like, imagine Kyrie. Kyrie is almost certainly going to be in the Hall of Fame, but imagine if he never played with LeBron. Imagine if he continued to struggle with those Cleveland teams that were winning like 15, 20 games before LeBron got there and 14 and got back there in 14. And, if he didn't get the chance to make that shot in the game 7 against the Warriors and have that sort of championship moment attached to his legacy, maybe he would be the equal of a Jamal Crawford, I don't know. And if Jamal had that sort of thing in his career, would he be, he would probably be a definite Hall of Famer, That's how the ball bounces though. But yeah, let's anything else you guys want to jump out on with the tip off?
Just real quick, man. We talking about legacies, and on Monday it came out that Kobe Bryant's estate and Nike, that their 5-year deal had expired, and Vanessa, has broken away. At least for right now, I guess there's still some wiggle room for them to possibly get another deal done. We talk about a guy with a legacy and not just on the court, but off the court. A lot of players are wearing his shoes, have been wearing his shoes. I think it's something like 20% of NBA players last year were wearing them. WNBA players are wearing them. So to see where this goes, so I think there's a limited amount. I think Nike is able to, they still can sell whatever they've made to this point. There's no, I don't think there's any specific timetable, but once that sells out, his online merchandise is going to disappear. So now you have guys in the NBA who are probably going to try to get their hands on every pair of shoes they can get, and then either they are going to play in them or keep them. So it'd be interesting to see where this is going to go. I guess in a grander sense, it's not a huge deal, but you associate guys with brands. And for him not to have gotten like a long-term lifetime contract like LeBron and Jordan got, it's confusing. It's confusing, man, given the type of player that he was, and again, what he's meant to the game and continues to mean to the game, especially these young guys who, in interviews, they always kind of big him up, always talking about Mamba mentality. Like, I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. So something to keep an eye on moving forward. I know that Vanessa Bryant is wanting to continue producing some of his merchandise. I think before he passed, he was looking toward creating his own Mamba brand. So
yeah,
we'll see where things go from here.
And they've secured that copyright, right? Like for a Mamba copyright or something like that.
So they've got the Mamba and they've got his signature. The only thing they don't have, from what I read, is the little sheath logo that belongs to Nike.
Okay,
they got the Mamba in his signature.
And like you said, it's interesting that they didn't lock him down, lock things down with his estate, especially in the wake of his passing. You think that's a lot of money that's going to come in, and maybe the family, in thinking that, probably was like, well, we want to have control of that part of that logo and that branding, so that's definitely going to be interesting whether that's going to stand alone, or maybe they'll pair. I don't know if maybe they'll pair up with another apparel company. But like you say, Drew, there figured to be a lot of money involved in that Mamba branding going forward.
Yeah, and I'm sure maybe on looking at it from Nike's perspective, maybe they figured that because his shoes are pretty much strictly about on court. You got a guy like Jordan. Everybody's trying to copy his shoes. It's a fashion value to it, whereas Kobe's lines is not really that component. But yet and still, his shoes sell out. The limited quantities that seem to come out, they seem to sell off the shelves very quickly. So it's weird, man. It's a weird kind of coin flip there, a double-edged sword going on.
Y'all, Josh, y'all got any thoughts on that?
He didn't sign a. Yeah, I'm not shocked that he didn't sign a lifetime deal with Nike. Thinking about the way in which Kobe moves and operates, I think he was very pleased with the way in which Nike was managing his brand as he ended his basketball career. Like, you got to think, it's only LeBron, Giannis, Paul George, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant. Those are like the 5 guys that have their shoes that are active players in the NBA with Nike basketball. And Kobe was the lone retired player. So while he had a lot of respect in the league and guys and players were wearing his shoes from the likes of DeMar DeRozan, the PJ Tuckers, the Devin Bookers of the world, and so many others, I don't think he was pleased with the way in which they were managing the brand. And the one thing that makes Kobe's situation with Nike so unique compared to Mike's and LeBron, Michael and LeBron were with Nike from day one. A lot of people always forget, Kobe started out with Adidas. Arn Teller and them, his agent at the time, before he went to Rob Pelinka, they signed with Adidas. And the Crazy 8, which is what they rebranded it now that he's no longer affiliated with the Adidas brand, was really the Kobe 1. So I'm pretty sure that's what Nike's going to probably have to do. They're going to have to figure out a way to get creative in regards to how do we put Kobe's shoe on the market without actually having his name on there. Sort of similar to like what Reebok was trying to do with Frank Thomas's shoe, the Big Hurt that was real popular back in the day, and they was bringing it back out as a retro a couple of years back, even though they went to court over that, and it got kind of ugly between both parties. So I'm not shocked that he didn't want to sign with them, and I think Kobe and Vanessa's probably going to seek to do the same thing. I wouldn't be shocked if they try to turn that Mamba name and all those trademarks and utilize that into creating a brand. They already had the Sports Academy named after him, even though they removed it. I think that might have been part of the reason why they removed it, because they know that his estate holds significant value.
Okay, definitely. I'm glad you brought that up. That he wasn't he would have never been a career Nike guy because he started, with Adidas. So, that's sort of like a prodigal son thing. That maybe Nike was just like, hey, you weren't born into this, so we'll let you go on about your business.
Now that said,
it's hard to get a shoe with the swoosh.
What's that?
I said it's hard to get a shoe with the swoosh.
Man. Now that being said,
it's like trying to get a record deal as an artist, for real.
I didn't think about how few guys, until you just rattled it off, how few guys do have an exclusive shoe with Nike. I would have thought it'd have been more than that, but the majority of even star players in the league, they just wear other people's shoes or they wear Jordans or something,
Yeah. Now I was gonna add that that being said, Nike was one of the few sponsors or brands to stick with him during the whole Colorado and everything. So
but do you remember how they did him though when he had the case? You remember how they did him? He is technically like the Kobe 1, but they didn't brand it in his name. But yet that was really Kobe's shoe.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of waiting for it to blow over, but not quite. 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did.
Good point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Nike has always been good with sticking with athletes when they go through real life situations, even including court cases, things that sort. You can look at Tiger Woods as a prime example. He went through, even though they did drop him at one point, they brought him back, and you saw how that marriage, was reconciled to a point where he's still there now. So I'm not surprised at that. I think it will be a disservice that Nike didn't renew the contract. Considering, the legacy and what Kobe really brought to Nike, especially when you talk about an advertising perspective. When they talk about the commercials that he did with Kanye West, be better, things of that sort. Like the memorable Nike commercials with him and LeBron as the puppets or as the Muppets per se during for the past couple of years, and those type of things really help take Nike's game to the next level, especially during that era where Kobe was at the tail end of that prime, still winning championships, and LeBron was the upcoming guy taking over that mantle. Like those were memorable things. That, at least as me growing up as a kid watching those things, it's like, dang, how can you let that go? You know what I mean? That's such a memorable part of our lives. I just wonder though, as far as why Vanessa backed off from the deal, from the opportunity. I wonder if it had something to do with the fact that they wanted to combine the Mamba brand with that Nike, and Nike might not have wanted that to happen. I wondered if that had something to deal with that, considering like Gabe mentioned, Kobe wanted to eventually have his own brand. He was working towards branding his product, and although that is Nike's product, Kobe's imprint was in that product, and it sold at such a rate that you can't ignore his impact on Nike and what he brought to the table with that. So I wonder if the family wanted to combine all that into one, to where he's still with Nike for the long term, but at the end of the day, you got to imprint the Mamba mentality. You got to imprint the Mamba brand on that actual shoe and sell it as a retro. And I don't know if Nike really wanted to do that, because the only person that really can do that or wanted to do that is Michael Jordan himself. And you can't compare that type of shoe line legacy to Jordan and what Jordan has, considering, especially when you talk about the Air Jordans, that's a whole nother level of comparison. That's not you can't compare. So I wondered if that was brought to the table, and if Nike was like, you know what, we're not gonna mess with that, because that's not gonna impact us the way that it impacted Michael Jordan. I mean, even though they brought out some retro LeBrons, I think at one point, where it's like this first or second shoes, or we're considered retros now, but they not reselling or selling like Jordan. So I wonder if that was brought to the table, and why, and if that played a role as far as why Vanessa didn't want to renew that contract or that lifetime contract with Nike.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, Josh. Well said there, man. We started off the show, man, shouting out DMX and Black Rob, and I'll be remiss, to not bring this up, but apparently another legend has passed, Shock G from Digital Underground. It's spread out on Twitter now. Shock G, amazing artist, man. The Humpty Hump, Humpty Dance, that was everywhere back in, that was before your time, Josh. That 1990, Digital Underground was killing it, and they, brought Tupac to the world essentially. And Shock G made some amazing music, man. As a beat maker, as a lyricist, a performer, he was a funny, entertaining, thoughtful guy. And RIP to him, man. So, man, it's rough, man. I don't know. I just don't understand it, man. Why so many of our legends in hip hop, go out like this. These brothers not even reaching, sometimes 50, 60 years old. He was 57. Shock was. So, really hate to bring us down, a little bit there, but I have to shout it out. Definitely RIP to Shock G. And as we continue the show, though, man, I was gonna bring I guess to make things a little positive, talk about something positive. My tip off thing essentially was going to be about the Knicks, who won 8 in a row, and it's they're alone in the number 4 spot in the East, and this season to me a while back was seeming to, it seemed to be like a dual thing, like there was going to be a race back to legitimacy by both the Knicks and the Bulls. The Bulls have since fell back, but the Knicks have kept going, and we've sort of watched from afar. We have a little bit of emotional tie here in Chicago with that team because they're coached by Tom Thibodeau and they have Derrick Rose amongst their ranks. And a couple months ago we was worrying about where would Derrick Rose be at the end of this season. Would he be involved with a team that's in the playoff hunt? And that's going to be the case. Derrick Rose is going to play some meaningful games to end the stretch of this season. He's going to play with the New York Knicks, and he's been contributing thus far, since he's been there. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts just on this team having this current 8-game streak that they're on. Are they a dangerous team? And do you mirror them in any way with the Bulls? Who we're going to go into after this, like who haven't picked up themselves in the way that the Knicks have.
I don't want to stay too long on this topic because I'm going to bleed into the Bulls a little bit. I want to say that when we get to it. But obviously, happy for D Rose, happy for Tom Thibodeau, man. I think Thibodeau got a lot of slack for the amount of minutes he was playing guys when he was coaching the Bulls throughout his tenure with us, Minnesota. That's always the kind of the knock on him. When I put them up against the Bulls, I just wish, man, that somebody on this Bulls roster, man, had the balls to call guys out, man, and hold guys accountable. To stop with the whole post game, man, we just didn't have it tonight, man. We came out lackluster. We just didn't have the energy. Like, what is that, man? Like, this is a franchise that ain't been to the playoffs in a minute. Zach LaVine hasn't won more than 3 games in a row his whole Bulls career, maybe his whole career, but one or the other. Definitely the Bulls career. So for them to lack that fire is really disheartening. But to shift it back to New York, I don't know how much of a threat they really can be, even though they've been one of the top defenses in the league this whole season. Obviously, the calling card of Thibs, but just against those upper echelon teams in the East, who they obviously wouldn't have to face until that second round if they advance past the first round. I don't see them really making too much noise past the first round. But even that is saying something, given the drought that they've had in the postseason.
And yeah, that's a decent way to look at it. But and like you say, with Tibbs though, and that team, I think they are ranked number 1 in total defense or whatever rating in the league. So with that, but at the same time, I just watched a segment on ESPN The Jump where they mentioned they're top 10 or number 1, I think, in total defense, but bottom 10 in scoring, which it makes sense for Tibbs teams as well. But what you get with Tibbs teams is defense, no lack of effort, no wasted effort, and they always seem to play up to competition. Whereas, with the Bulls, we've seen so often since then, they've always played down the competition. Mm-hmm. So I think with that being the case, I could see the Knicks at least maybe upsetting, if they're the 4 and the 5, if they're the 4 and the 4-5 matchup, maybe it's not an upset. But they, them getting to that second round, I think could be very, feasible. And, there'll be a heck of a turnaround for for that franchise in one season. You know, it's the perfect thing for them. You know that. You know, we've seen one season turnarounds with that franchise before, and they turn right back around the next season to be sorry again. But the promise is there now. You know, with their they had a restructuring of their front office that just was just as extensive as the Bulls, again, and comparing them to the Chicago team here in Chicago. And they changed their coach. They changed their they changed their roster. The Bulls didn't change their roster until a couple weeks ago. But they changed their roster over the last off season, and they got a guy like Randall now who has established himself as an all-star, very much in the way that Zach LaVine has here. So they got a lot going for them, man, and definitely I can't ever say that I'm rooting for the Knicks. That's just the '90s kid in me, but I would say that the NBA is a little better when they're competitive and when their fans are feeling themselves to a degree. Because the fun thing about New York Knicks and New York Knicks fans is that they always overfeel themselves, then they ultimately fail, and then we get to all make fun of them. So that's what's fun about the Knicks competing and contending. So that's what I'm kind of hoping to see. If they go ahead, they get in the playoffs. We know they're in the playoffs. Let them go ahead and win a series, and then think that they're going to do something against the 76ers or the Nets, or especially the Nets in the second round, and then let them fall on their face, and then we'll all have a good laugh at that. But anyway.
Yeah, that's what Tibbs teams do, right? Tibbs teams are known for, no lack of effort. You're going to play hard every night. You're going to keep the games close. And 9 times out of 10, depending on it doesn't really matter who you got on your roster. You're going to put yourself in the best chance to win. And we saw that with what he did here with Nate Robinson. He and Nate Robinson led the Bulls past the first round of the playoffs. Every team he's coached, for the most part, they've made it past the first round of the playoffs, no matter who was on the roster. That's the difference between elite coaching and on the way to greatness in elite coaching. We have a coach in Billy Donovan where he knows what he's talking about. He knows what it's like to, take teams to the playoffs and exceed and turn programs in the right direction or franchises in the right direction. But that's a completely different animal when you want to talk about what he did with OKC and the team roster that he had compared to what Tibbs is doing with what he had. It's a complete different level of coaching, a completely different level of success from that coaching. And we often blame Tibbs for that, for his, his style of coaching as far as his toughness and playing all these young guys and even old veterans, large minutes and during games and things of that sort. But it's producing results, and the results have been completely positive ever since he's been a head coach. No matter where he's been, he's turned around the Knicks. He turned around the Minnesota Timberwolves. He turned the Bulls around, and that's all you can ask for as a head coach, especially if you give him the talent that he can work with. So I just view this as typical Tibbs, the impact of Tibbs and his coaching style and the culture that he brings to franchises and helps turn them around into playoff success. And for him to do it in New York, like LeBron James said, and you mentioned just now, Kyle, New York is always better when the Knicks are winning, or at least in the positive direction. It's been a long time, but hey, we're here now, and the Knicks are making noise, and I definitely see them making an impact as far as going past the first round of the playoffs, especially with the crazy season that everyone's having now. I definitely can see that, and that's exciting, especially for Derrick Rose, who has to sniff the playoffs since Minnesota. It's been a while for him, and for him to be in that environment again, I think it's going to be really exciting. And I'm rooting for Derrick, and Tibbs, and what can be taking place in New York, because like you said, the future it's promising, especially when you have Tibbs as the head coach. You have at least $70 million worth of cap space heading into next season. You can make some moves, and I'm excited to see now that you got aside from Leon Rose, you also have Worldwide West there. Knicks can do some damage after this what they had this season, and it's kind of scary comparing to what the Bulls did for, even though with the moves that we made, the offseason looks a little sketchy. So, considering, the Bulls and the Knicks, contrast, yeah, it's interesting. But hey, New York's on a roll right now, man. And for them to go through that 8-game winning streak, have D-Rose really impact that 8-game winning streak, hey, you got to give your props to him, and it's exciting to see.
Definitely. And again, making the comparisons, we about to go deeper into the Bulls, but on our side, on this side here, you got reports of Levine not wanting to pick, not even thinking about picking up an extension this year. And on the other side, you got the Knicks all tingly about Zion saying that how much he likes to play in the Garden. It's like I said, it's a lot of fun stuff that's going to be overplayed in the media. Definitely when you talk about the next year or so. But I don't know. What did y'all think about that right quick with Zion, his performance at the Garden and his quotes afterwards?
Rook's still learning.
He's still learning.
Rook's still learning, man. I mean, and when you talk about putting it into the whole perspective, like, we really shouldn't take too much into that quote. I mean, because let's be serious, everybody loves to play at the Garden. Kobe loved to play at the Garden. LeBron loves to play at the Garden. Everybody has made it known that they love playing at the Garden, because the Garden is just that legendary. It's part of the mecca of basketball. It's historic. There's a lot of components that play into what makes the Madison Square Garden that much special, right? So that's a given. Of course, superstars love playing in Madison Square Garden and the history that comes with it.
Because I honestly, that's first place was New York. That like I'm gonna be real. I mean, game. He got his home player, RJ Barrett over there, and so forth.
Gay connection a little bit low. See if it jumped it. See if it get better. Oh, you guys can jump in if you want.
I'm not mad at Zion's enthusiasm, and you gotta love it. He got the question, he answered it honestly. I'm just upset about what the media did and how they ran with it. And I feel bad for New Orleans and other small market teams. Like, man, y'all just can't wait to get this dude to a big city, man. It's I don't like it. I don't like it, man. I don't like it. It gives me, pause, and it makes me feel a way about how things ended with Anthony Davis and him leaving there. Not to say that you have to stay with the team that drafts you, but man, if you're a small market team, like, it's almost like you just steady renting guys, unless you have the foresight and the luck and the shrewdness of my man in OKC, man. Like,
Sam Presti.
Sam Presti, yeah, thank you. What do you do, man?
Yeah,
or a superstar in Giannis who decides that he wants to stay with the team that drafted him and be down with them and try to make moves in that regard.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know, Gay. You may have to come in and come out and come back in, Gay. But I feel you, Drew, on what you say. How hard it can be, a little bit harder for the mid majors, as it were, in the NBA, or the small market teams. And it's interesting because right now you got the top two teams in the West are sort of smaller market teams in Utah and Phoenix. Not small, or smaller. Phoenix isn't really a small market, but Utah, you can't say is. And the biggest of the big markets are, they have some competition amongst them, and New Orleans. I would love for. New Orleans is a city, a great sports city, and Zion can definitely be a king there. But yeah, you always have that pull in sports, and especially in the NBA with guys just gravitate to New York or LA in one way or another. So I don't know. Yeah, I just love the overplay of it though. As soon as he said that, everybody, you knew that was going to dominate at least a day of NBA reporting. So, we're nowhere even close to the end of his rookie contract. So it's like, he's likely going to at least extend one time. And if you look at the way these things play out, he's probably going to extend at least once in New Orleans. It may be a short extension. But he's, I would think he'll be there at least 6-7 years before he even jumps. He even really gives himself a chance to jump to another franchise. But anyway, then Gabe is attempting to come back on, rejoin him. Gabe, how you doing, bro? You good? He is. Gabe, you okay? Gabe, you good? I think the signal's a little better from what I'm seeing, but I was dropped back down again. We'll try to hopefully you can stay with us, Gabe. But let's just go into the bull stuff, as it were. And I'm just gonna throw out my question, man, that I put on the rundown. What the hell is wrong with this team, man? Approach it however you want to approach it. But I'm gonna start it for one. I'm gonna start why are they so bad against Cleveland? That's what I want to know. They can't beat this team worth a damn. Not only can they can't even compete with them. It's like they get blown out every time they face them. What is it about the Cavaliers? No LeBron. LeBron ain't walked through that door. Kyrie ain't walked through that door. Nance ain't walked through that door. Hot Rod Williams, Mark Price. None of these dudes will walk through the door to beat these Bulls. And they can't do nothing against them. I just don't understand that. Somebody got to tell me something. 87 Ron Harper ain't walked through that door.
I don't know, man. Anybody's guess is as good as mine, man. They just beat them. What was that, like 2 days prior to the last game? I don't know, man. This team is sometimes beyond comprehension, bro. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just like, this has been the whole narrative with the Bulls since Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, right? You play inconsistent against the inconsistent teams. You can't stay afloat. You always have to struggle to come back from behind and win. You can honestly make a case that the previous roster prior to trade deadline was playing better than the current roster we got now. Mm-hmm. It's not. We know that the moves that they made were, big time moves for the future. But the problem was, you're trying to win now. You made it clear at the trade deadline that you bringing in Vucevic, you bringing in Daniel Theus, you bringing in Troy Brown and those guys. You made it known that we're trying to make the playoffs this year, and not just the play-in. You're trying to actually make the playoffs as a true validation of your status in the league. And with Zach LaVine being out due to, the protocols and things of that sort. Kobe White still playing inconsistent basketball, up and down basketball. Trying to acclimate the new guys in your offense as far as how you even want to how you want your offense even to flow, because you still haven't resolved your point guard situation. Even though Troy Brown is a nice addition, he hasn't been the full-time point guard for the Bulls, so you still don't know what your future is going to be looking like from a point guard position. You're still trying to acclimate Vucevic, who is a double-double nightmare and has an even triple-double nightmare at times, but he's still trying to get acclimated to the offense. You got Daniel Theis, who does the great stuff, but outside of that, where else is your production going to come from? It's really up and down, and the Bulls seem to accept off too many times. Even though it's unacceptable, we got another game to go. Let's look at the next game, keep it moving. Sometimes somebody has to be that dog and step in and say, nah, we can't do this anymore. Someone has to step up and be that alpha male to stop the bleeding, make a statement, and actually truly try to defy the bad habits that the Bulls are so accustomed to. Yeah. And we don't have that person. Now, Zach LaVine has the potential to be that person because he has that sort of, at times, especially offensively, Mamba-like mentality. I think we have the coaching staff that can get to that level of toughness when you want to talk about displaying that mentality, but it's non-existent. And I don't know if it's because even coming into the season, we knew that we was going to have a new front office. We knew we were going to have a new head coach. We already suspected and put out there that this year was going to be a trial year anyways. So even though we're trying to make the playoffs, it won't be too bad if we don't, because we already, kind of limited expectations this season. I don't know what it is. However, this is not how good franchises are functioning. They're trying to make the playoffs every year. There's no excuses. And it seems like for us, we have excuses, but at the same time, we just have less Jim Boylan press conferences. That's how I view it. We just have less.
That is something. But that is something, because those Boylan press conferences were murder. But at the same time, like Drew said, we still got this all shucks type of thing, like we playing for Mayberry or something. Like, they got to get off that, man. This is, like you say, they need some more dog in them, and they just need to compete better, for one, and the mix of the mix of how these players operate with each other, the rotations, the chemistry, that's an ongoing thing that's going to be, attended to more in all season. And I think the fact that we did know coming into this season that the whole season essentially was going to be an observing season. It was a season of observance. We was going to look at what the front office was going to look at what this team is, and see it, break it down to its components, individual components, see what's there to keep. What should we keep? What should we invest in? And what should we do away with? Now, but you do get a whole season for that. To be a reasonable fan, maybe there's a contradiction there, but to be a reasonable fan, you can't give this team, this franchise, a year to do that. But when you make the moves that you made at the trade deadline, which were so, that was some surgical stuff that they did at the trade deadline. And aside from getting rid of Laurie, they pretty much did everything that day that you would want in regards to, getting another all-star, an established all-star, getting some more defense in the post, getting some more, more defense on the perimeter with Troy Brown, a little more flexibility with him. They did a lot that day where it was like, okay, yeah, we could make a run here. Let's see what we could do. In the East as it was at the time, I remember talking that night with you guys, like, I think at the time there was like a 3-game difference between the 10 spot and the 4 spot. And now So that was the time to strike. That was the time to establish yourself, to reestablish yourself. And while teams like the Knicks, like the Hawks have done that, the Bulls have only fallen further back. And to be like 2-3 spots further back than you were at that trade deadline is a failure. It's a failure that has to be attributed to somebody. I don't know if it's the coaching or the players or some mix, or you know, or even you don't necessarily want to go there yet because they're, AK and Eversley and them, they weren't thinking just of these last 20, 30 games that were to come when they made those moves. They were thinking beyond that. But, those were the first games that you were going to play with this new roster. So you figured that you made these moves with those games in mind, as well as 2022 and 2023 and such. So, as it is right now, they failed to guard themselves for a playoff run that was possible in 2021, and that's a disappointment. And now we go into it in a minute here. The possibilities that exist with them not making the playoffs. There are some positives that could be gleaned from this, but we've been waiting a long time to play meaningful basketball here in Chicago again, and to seemingly not do it again and not have another May and June where it's going to be dead here, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it's not a narrative in the right word, but I'm using it's not a clean narrative because you had these big deals being made and you're swiping out 5 players for 5 new ones, and there's an adjustment period that's going to come along. I think they were in the midst of a road trip. You got a weird season, limited practice time. So you have to take all that into consideration. But like you guys said, like the expectation went from we're going to see what we got in front of us. We just want to be more competitive, see what people can do in the roles that this roster forces them to play, the Kobe Whites of the world. That all shifted when they played maybe past expectations, and when the starting lineup changed, when Karnisovas kind of made it known that he was going to hitch the Bulls' future to Zach LaVine with the trade for Vucevic and Troy Brown Jr., Tice. When you do that now, and he said it clearly that now it's about winning. It's not just about next year. When that happened, we're thinking, man, okay, maybe best case scenario, we vault up into that 6th, 7th range. We understand that even though they made these trades, that there's still issues with point guard. There's still issues with defense. Some nights are going to be better than others, but it's not going to be fixed or not have the potential to be fixed really until next year. So the main thing I'm looking for is more competitiveness, and I want to know why is it that in these games that mean so much, in these games that are on paper, the ones that this team is supposed to win, why are these games so hard to get up for this team that is supposed to be trying to, make a run at this playing tournament? That's, like I said before, that's the most disheartening part. Again, these guys haven't been to the playoffs. Many of them haven't. I don't see that fight. You guys call it that dog. I think they need an asshole on this team. Like, I legit, and maybe it's happening behind closed doors. I legit want to see somebody with some clout on this team, a Zach LaVine, a Vucevic. Man, beyond that, I don't know. Somebody that can demand that respect. I want somebody to pull another guy by his jersey, get him in check, get him in line, pull his cards to a certain extent. Something, man. Like, where's the fire? Why is the fire coming out in the post-game press conferences so often? Like, are you guys saying this to each other in the midst of the game or in the locker room? Don't wait to tell it to the media and the rest of the world. By then the game is over. What's the point?
Yeah, that's sorry to cut you off, but pay back on Drew's point. That's what you want to talk about, the difference of the cultures, right?
You said
Yeah, Gabe, yeah, go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I mean, like, welcome to life in the NBA with a young team.
Okay, yeah.
Like, no disrespect to Zach LaVine, but Zach LaVine's an all-star in the league, but he's never in basketball. You know, and they and like outside of that and Vucevic and maybe Garrett Temple, they don't even have guys like you said who've been in the playoffs. Those type of guys on your roster, hard vets to come in and instantly.
Yeah, that mix is important, definitely, to have the experience, the players who, have that edge to them with experience, and, playoff experience is meaningful when you know how to play in those most pressurized games in the NBA. Playing those games in the regular season pretty much cake, after a certain point, and you can utilize your experience and pass it down to the younger players. But the Bulls are mostly younger players still at this point, and younger players who haven't played many important games, from LaVine on down. So it's tough. I guess that's one of the reasons, it has to be one of the reasons why they can't get up for a team like Cleveland, even at this important part of the season where every win counts, even more than they did a couple months ago. So yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. Between what you and Gabe said, those are all very valid points. But you also got to look at another direction, which I keep harping on, is coaching. I mean, the culture that's set up, the coach helps establish the culture that's being set up in place. When Billy Donovan came into this league, he already stepped into a culture that was thriving with superstar talent and playoff success and deep playoff success. So for him to carry on that mantle, what was already established and given to him, that was it was easier for him to coach, to get comfortable into coaching and coaching teams and at least keeping them afloat. We're talking about consistent playoff success as well as deep postseason success. The only exception that you can give him is maybe last year when he had with what he had with just Chris Paul. But even then, they took the Houston Rockets to 7 games in the bubble in the first round. And that's just also part of the Chris Paul effect, because that's what Chris Paul does. He helps make teams better. Now you put him in a situation where he has a rising all-star, but that was pretty much it. It's rising all-star with a bunch of pieces. You have to coach things differently from what you're accustomed to at times to get the message and point across. That's why Tom Thibodeau is such a vast contrast with what he's doing in New York. If you want to look at the roster perspective from the New York Knicks compared to what the Bulls had, especially at the beginning of the season, it's eerily similar. You had a rising star, and a rising star that's turning himself into an all-star like a Julius Randle. You had a draft pick that was very solid per se, and RJ Barrett, like the Bulls have with Kobe White, and it's just a bunch of other pieces. And yet Thibodeau is taking them to a higher height and currently sitting in the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, where the Bulls are struggling and have degressed even after making all-star moves or big-time blockbuster moves to improve them, but they digressed. And now they're sitting in the 12th spot in the Eastern Conference. Coaching plays a big role in that too. Yes, you want to talk about effort and things of those sorts. You can't coach effort. However, you can demand effort and find different tactics to create the discipline needed in order to excel in those areas and beyond. That's what made Tibbs so good as a head coach. Billy Donovan has some of that, and it appears to have had some of that from his success at Oklahoma City. At the same time, this is a different team with a different roster than what he's accustomed to. So he's probably going through coaching pains as well. Even though he has the tactics, even though he has the philosophy, how do you implement that philosophy into a whole entire team with a roster that is so young, that doesn't have playoff experience, doesn't really know what it's like to be in a playoff hunt compared to Tibbs, where a situation may be somewhat uniquely, and they haven't sniffed the playoffs in a long time, but it's just a different dog mentality. It's a different coaching styles, a different culture and feel to where players are bought into that. And for the Bulls, even though they may be bought into it, it doesn't show up always on the court. I think coaching got to play a role in that too.
Yeah. I throw this out to both of you, but Drew, you could start out. Do you think there's a reason to? Do you see any reason to reevaluate Donovan as the coach of today and tomorrow for the Bulls, given what's happened in these last few weeks?
I understand. I get the question, and I think there's some validity to that, but I don't second guess the hire. I just think that this offseason is going to be huge in terms of what this product is going to look like next year and who Donovan is going to have at his disposal. It may be the rest of this season or the season to this point. Donovan's learning from this too. Maybe he is able to see kind of how he needs to push certain buttons with this team. I've liked what he's done this season, aside from maybe some rotational things here and there, which is a little bit nitpicky because I also like the fact that he doesn't fix his rotations based on being old to a certain player. If a guy's got it going, he's generally going to ride him. Whether or not this guy has played this many minutes in the games leading up to whatever game they're in at that moment in time, it doesn't matter. He tries to find different combinations. He looks for answers on the fly. And we got to remember, those first two games of the season, blowouts against Atlanta and Indiana, he basically came out to the media and in so many words is like, man, we talking about winning. I just got to teach these guys how to compete first. We can't even talk about being a potential playoff seed or play in tournament berth without us just learning how to compete, just to not get hit in the mouth and double over. There's got to be a fight to it. So I don't know what's going to happen in this offseason. Lonzo Ball would be great, but Lonzo Ball is not going to solve what may be the bigger problem, which again is accountability factor and just that dog. I wish Chris Paul was cheaper. I wish Mike Conley would entertain the thought of coming to Chicago. But I mean, that's a pipe dream. That's a pipe dream.
Yeah. We that type of veteran stewardship at that position would be nice. It probably would make a big difference. Like imagining a Chris Paul or a Conley on this team. Yeah, that'd be great. Or imagine, I don't know. It's interesting. I saw this interesting piece on Complex this week where they redrafted the 2020 draft, and they actually had Patrick P. Wills stay with the Bulls at number 4, but they had Halliburton move up to number 2 or 3. He was before, which was probably where, when you look at the class right now, you probably could say he's top 3 at this point from what his production was. And you got they had Lonzo at number 1, and I think Edwards at number 3. But I mean, it's just imagine if they had got LaMelo, I should say, not Lonzo, LaMelo or Halliburton in the draft, or if they picked up Lonzo. at some point. I don't know. Maybe things will be a little different, but that's probably the main concern right now. When you look at, they need a floor general, and they need someone who can, execute the team's defense and offense and be the right extension of what Donovan wants on the court. So we'll see how that goes. As this team is continually being built.
Yeah, I mean, if there was anything I kind of second guessed, it was more so who they got at the trade deadline. I wrote a piece about just the overwhelming feeling of excitement that most of us had when we heard about that deal, getting a player of Vucevic's caliber. That's huge. But just in hindsight, if you're going to be tied to Zach LaVine, maybe a point guard should have been your first. Should have been where you looked first. But again, you can only play the hand you're dealt. It takes more than one team to tango in terms of trade talks. And I think they were trying to get Ball, but when Vucevic came about and they had to get rid of those, or not get rid of, but had to send out those protected picks, they pretty much soured New Orleans on making a deal for in return. So, we'll see. I mean, I'm not sour on the deal just because, like you said, Kyle, like we got to give it some time. As disappointing as this season may end, like there's still a whole off season of moves to make, a whole proper training camp and preseason and everything to get through. So there's still hope for the team. I think fans that are too quick to jump the gun saying that they made a huge mistake, I think that's too much. There's too much right now, man. You gotta give it some time to breathe. As hard as it is, because we want to win now. But
I think late April next year you can be more definitive in your opinions with what has happened now. But right now, as bad as they are, I still, I like seeing Vucevic in the jersey. I like seeing them play for this team. I like the guy from Boston. I like Troy Brown. I like these guys on this team going forward. So, if, like I said, there's still some things that may be up in the air with LaVine, but, this team next year they have a core that's ready to be built around. And, given what the East is overall, and, given that we do know that our team makers, our decision makers, they are active guys and they have some sort of smarts about them. I have confidence that by October of this year, they'll have some sort of reformat for this team that we can be confident in going into the next season. Now, if they play along these lines, starting off, through October, November, December, then there's going to be rumblings and grumblings, rightfully so. But like I said, that we'll get to that bridge and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But right now, overall, if you get part of what's going to be looked at for next year, that could be, a very possible and a good thing is this team may get what they can't if it's 5 or lower, they won't get anything because of the trade. But God help us if they somehow get in the lottery and they get a top 4 pick. What we talk about? Jalen Suggs, Cade, come on, man. That's that type of conspiratorial luck that people think about with the NBA. Like people gonna be thinking that there's some plug with the Bulls and the offices in New York if that happens. But I'll be glad to take it.
Yep, same here.
So you never know, man. With this, if that type of thing happens, then yeah, we all good again, you know. So, you know, like I say, just we'll take these lumps for now. You know, we Bulls fans, we Bulls observers, we've been taking lumps. We'll just go ahead and see what the future unfolds, you know.
Yeah.
But shoot, we got a little bit more time left here with this show. Fortunately, Gabe won't be able to join us. He has some issues with Restream, man. I don't know. Every time we go on Restream, he can't stay with us. But he'll be back on the show soon. But a couple things, I just wanted to jump into. I mentioned Steph Curry. Like, everybody has just been talking about him and his incredible run that he's been having. Now, you know, has it made a big difference competitively? You know, can't really say, but that's some of that he can't control. Of course, they lose James Weissman, you know, in recent times, and they're just not the same team that they have been in recent years. But he's playing arguably as good a ball as he's ever played in his career, including his MVP years, and all these sorts of, you know, hot takes and, you know, exaggerations and stuff has gone on about him. I don't know. I just want you guys' opinion on, you know, how have you been observing this recent run with Steph and Steph, and, you know, what have you guys been taking from it?
You'll be surprised at what you see when you can stay healthy, right? That was always the thing with Steph Curry. We always knew he had the talent. We always knew that he can pretty much do what he's doing now on any given night for a long stretch of the season. Recent years, he's been, you know, unhealthy. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. And that, obviously, we know that comes from years and years and years of back-to-back years of going to the finals and, you know, playing against some tough Cleveland teams and against LeBron and trying to win all those championships. I mean, that's part of what it means to be a dynasty. And they just caught the tail end of those things when it comes to those injuries. So Steph has been able to stay healthy. He's getting older. So, you know, he had to roll with the punches. But having a healthy Steph Curry is not just big for the Warriors, but for the league as a whole. It enhances what the league promotes and what they need, especially from a ratings perspective. And the Warriors is Steph Curry. I mean, whether you want to agree with it or not, you know, the Warriors will never be the Warriors without Steph Curry. He is the face and the brand of that franchise. So for him to do what he's doing, man, it's incredible. And I got to give it up to my cousin over there, man. I got to give it up to my light-skinned cousin over there because, you know, he's doing big things in the Bay Area. If anything, it's a good sign for Warriors fans because you're bringing that back into next season. Hopefully you can have a fully healthy Klay Thompson. You're going to have a healthy James Wiseman. Depending on what moves you make this offseason, depending on what's going on and being rumored, you may bring in another guy that can pair with what you already have. And then you can keep Steph healthy. You can keep Draymond Green healthy. The Warriors are right back in the saddle of competing for another deep run in the Western Conference. So, if anything, man, God bless Steph, because without him, I don't know what the league or the Warriors would do right now. It'll be rough. And we have to appreciate his greatness and what he's bringing to the table every night that he's on the court.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned, like, God bless Steph, or the league should be blessed with Steph, because the thing is, like, they still scheduled them like an elite team this year as far as TV goes and everything. And, you know, nobody wants to see the Warriors without Steph. But you could put him, you know, as long as you have him, you could put him on a Saturday night on ABC game and get all the type of excitement and you know, that you want, and just, you know, just have fun. You know, it's amazing just what difference he makes, you know, as a ball player, you know, in real time. You know, you just want to watch him, you know, play ball as much as you can. Now, I wonder, you know, Drew, if you want to get into this, like, historically, though, people want to get into certain things. Like, we talked earlier about Hall of Fame and stuff, and Jamal Crawford in particular, but the type of arguments that go across with Hall of Fame and stuff. Of course, Seth is of course a lot for Hall of Fame. Now we talk about all-time great stuff with Seth. People are sort of resigned to the idea that he's the greatest shooter of all time. I guess it's really how can you really argue that at this point of I would, I'm the type that I would love to be able to just say a certain guy, you just throw certain people out there, but, of the past, but, he really, the numbers are just so prolific. It's almost like what you see with Wayne Gretzky in hockey, where the numbers are just so wild and inflated, that there's hardly anybody going to pass him up. There's nobody's going to have the opportunity because nobody's going to be able to both throw up the number of shots that he has and hit with the regularity that he has. Now, it's interesting because you look at certain people in the past, like maybe a Larry Bird. I saw something earlier this week where I think it said like, I forget this. I shouldn't even cite this because I don't have to. But it was something about the number of shots that were made, and it was like he made more shots in a 5-game period that Bird did in like a 3-year. Like it was something wild like that. But you also have like the stats of. The number of 10 3-point games that he's had. And, it's just ridiculous stuff that we can cite with him and all the time. Now, like I said, how do we exactly look at that? Do we just look at that in sort of a Wilt Chamberlain-ish type way, which is interesting because, he just reached the all-time Warriors scoring record, which Chamberlain had in a ridiculous lesser amount of games that Steph played. But do we look at Steph as just a guy who played and to his credit, he initiated the change in the game that allowed for these changes to happen where he's been able to inflate the 3-point statistics. But do we give him all the credit for that, or do we just say, well, if other players had been able to shoot with the regularity that he was, if coaches didn't handcuff people like Rick Barry and Larry Bird and Reggie Miller, maybe they would, and Roy and Ray Allen, maybe they would have had similar numbers as well. How do you look at that?
It's hard, man. It's tough, man. If for nothing else, just the different eras, man. It's just a different game, man. Offenses is kind of predicated on pick and rolls, and if you watch the games, man, those picks are being set so high up on the floor, man. It's crazy to think about where the game is going, where it's now more like, getting to the rim or shooting threes, like that mid range. Some guys are still pretty prolific in that area of the floor, but for the most part, man, that's where teams want their bread and butter to come from. Case in point, Jim Boylan in the time that he was here. He wanted guys either shoot the three or go to the rim. He was not a fan of the mid range as it was, but it's hard to put Steph Curry's place in the history of the game, or hard to find a place. He's there. I just don't know. He's the greatest shooter I've seen in my lifetime. Along with the Birds and the Reggie Millers, Ray Allens of the world, even the Mahmoud Abdul-Raufs of the world, man. It was some great shooters that I've had the opportunity to watch, but Steph is in a league of his own, man. You mentioned the amount of games he's had in his career where he's hit 10 or more threes. He's at 21 for his career. By comparison, Klay Thompson has 5 in his career. We consider Klay Thompson to be almost as prolific a shooter as his teammate.
Yeah.
So it's funny because if you look on NBA Twitter, man, I know our guy Brian Crawford, I see him debate Steph and Dame, like Steph and Dame almost daily, man.
He go down that hill with Dame, man.
Yeah, yes, he is, man.
I think I accidentally kicked Josh out. Oh, he's back. Okay, but yeah. That's. I was say BC gonna fight that fight to the death.
Yeah, I mean, to Steph's credit, I think he's revolutionized shooting guard position, or just shooters in general. Like I said, like in terms of where the game is going and how far up those screens are being set and the amount of space that the ball handlers are having to work with. He made it cool for Dame to fire those long bombs, for Trae Young to fire those long bombs. Even LeBron at times, for better or worse, throwing up 40-foot shots, man. It's just crazy because I know when I was growing up and be the old man in the room for right now, those shots, you throw that shot up, even if you make it, you go in and sit by the coach after that. You know what I'm saying?
I'm right with you, Drew. We didn't see stuff like that in the late 80s and 90s, man. Not at all.
It's crazy, man, where the game is going. It really is. I think an even more interesting conversation is how do you make sense of the all NBA teams, especially at the guard position and in the West?
Yeah, it's a lot of people to choose from. When you look at prolific scorers and people who are leading teams and people like Chris Paul and it's so many amazing guards in the game right now, man. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those teams play out this year, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
it's almost like my bad. It's almost like he's not as wildly loved or hated like LeBron, but he still is. There's like almost no middle ground with Steph.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it depends on like where you stand on the line of what he's brought to the game. Do you or I guess, do you think that his role in the evolution or de-evolution, depending on how you look at it, of the game, is it inflated or is it not? Because you could have guys, you have guys who do look at other players who do similar things, like you say with BC and Dame, who swear more by those players overall because maybe they're a little better off the dribble, or maybe they're more of a singular talent who has done more to lead a team on their own. Like, again, the thing with Steph is that he's pretty much getting his chance right now to lead the Warriors on his own, and you have him at 29 and 30 in the ninth in the conference, whereas Dame in a comparable situation is 32 and 26. Now, that's not a big difference, but you have a winning team against a losing team. So if you are a Dame guy, you can be like, well, look, you put Dame on those Warriors teams with Durant and healthy Clay and Draymond in his prime and stuff, you probably get all those titles probably against LeBron. If you get at least the same output,
I want to be fair. That wouldn't even be fair, man. About Dame Dollar with Kevin Durant in the backcourt like that. Oh, and Clay.
Yeah. So I mean, it speaks to the talent that's across the league, and so many great guards that maybe some of them are interchangeable, but still with Steph, he's put out the output, and when we look at a time like this where he, for all intents and purposes, should be declining. He has stepped up in a way to make himself into a, a a player who demands notice and maybe even some MVP votes in a year where otherwise he wouldn't get them. If he just played good, if he just was straight, he wouldn't be getting much attention now. But he's obviously playing to a degree where he's demanding so much attention in a year where a lot of stuff is happening around the league, but he still is demanded that the people pay attention to what he does.
And on a team where there's not really many threats, he's still getting off.
Yeah. So he can't. You have in championship years, you had you had the hard mission of like, okay, we can't focus on all these guys at once. We can't focus on Durant and Clay and Steph. So one of these guys are going to kill us, and they rotated at different times. Who's going to be doing the killing? So he got to eat, plenty, and then he had his times where he shined. But right now, he's everything. If you're a defense, if you're playing a game plan against him, what else do you do but just focus on him? But he's still doing what he's doing, even though he's the main focus on the team. So, you gotta give it up for dude, man.
Yeah.
But we getting ready to wrap up here. I wanted to localize another story that was sort of big in sports this week, with the whole European soccer thing, the Super League thing, that at the beginning of the week looked like it was gonna happen, but it fell apart in a couple of days. And it's interesting. I just thought about maybe this is something I'll do more in depth next week. But I just thought about like, what would a Super League be in the NBA? Because I'm of a mind that there should be probably 4 or 6 less teams in the NBA as it is. But you would if you go through each division and each conference and think about, well, where would I take those franchises from? It is a hard thing to do because of course I've done it in my head, but I think there is a different way that you could do things, a more Euro way of doing things, where you could possibly have an upper echelon, a Premier League, as it were, of the NBA with maybe 12 to 15 teams, and then have that middle league with the lesser teams, the rest of the 15 or so teams that are in the league now. There's 30 teams in the NBA now. And then you can add like a Seattle franchise that we've all been asking for years now. And then you have everything else, the G League and everything else. But with that, like I said, with that Super League or that Premier League, you introduce the idea, and this is why it's never going to happen, because you introduce the idea of relegation, because it's still the NBA. But if you fall off after a certain time, if you're like, say, the Knicks, and you have that year where you play into that Premier League, but then everything falls apart the next year, and you fall into that bottom of the Premier League, then you drop into that second level, and then another team that maybe plays itself up into the Premier League gets in there. But like I say, that's the European model. That's what soccer has done for decades, for generations, and that was at the heart of what happened with the Super League controversy with soccer. The richest teams in Europe wanted to separate themselves from all the other teams. And the interesting part about that is that a lot of those teams have stakes. Americans have stakes in a lot of those teams now, including people with NBA ties, like Mickey Harrison and LeBron James, of all people, who has part ownership in is it Manchester United or
I think it's Liverpool.
Liverpool? Yeah, you're right. Liverpool. I think Harrison maybe have United or something. Anyway, Malcolm Glazer as well. You talk about NFL who owns the Buccaneers, but Americans have more stakes in these Premier League teams and these top franchises in Europe than there's ever been. So I think that a lot of people say that may have influenced some of these top franchises, these richest franchises, to say, well, let's not play these other teams anymore. Let's just form our own thing, much like the NBA, where there is in the American leagues where there is no relegation. And then we just we make our own TV deals and do our own thing, and we make our, keep all our money for ourselves, because, we don't want to play these lesser teams and risk any relegation or risk any shame of losing to them on a weekly basis. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me to put that whole context in the NBA and think about what would that equate itself to. And, I don't know. You guys got any thoughts along those lines?
I mean, when you brought this up, I immediately started trying to think about, okay, who will my teams be? And to be honest with you, I was trying to get to 12 just because it was 12 original teams that wanted to do it in terms of soccer. I couldn't even get to 12, man. I stopped at 10. With all due respect to the Memphis Grizzlies and Dallas Mavericks, man, I got just so you guys can see, I got the Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Suns, based off this season, of course, the Heat, the Nets, the Jazz, Sixers, the Nuggets, and the Trailblazers. So I got 10 teams.
Okay.
6 from the West, 4 from the East that would fall into my Super League kind of dynamic.
Yeah. See, I thought of that too, and basing it off this year, I was more giving than you. I cut it off at 14.
Okay.
And I took the top 7 from each conference, because if you look at the standings, both in the East and the West, after the 7, you have like a 2-game gap between the 7 team and the 8 team. Mm-hmm. And the 8 team in the East is less than 500. The Grizzlies are just a game over 500 in the West. So to me, that seemed to be that's where I was allowed the cutoff to be. But you're a little bit more. I respect you having a higher standard and struggling to get to 12. I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, it also brings up the conversation of what we talked about in previous discussions, right? As far as changing your playoff format, because the Premier League, it can support that. You bring the best of the best each season into one area or into one, one special league on its own, and you can create your own new TV deals off that one league, and have at it. If you wanted to do it that way, especially for the playoffs, because for sure you will always have the best of the best in the playoffs. And if you want to increase those chances, obviously, because the East isn't as good as the Western Conference, you just eliminate the East and West, just make it a whole NBA thing.
And a lot of people have advocated for that over the years. Hey, you bring up a good point, and that's something that I thought of too. Like, essentially, the playoffs are sort of like the Super League, but you just have those restrictions of the conferences. But you could do it like in a way, like you say, Josh, where you eliminate the conferences, you do reseeding, and but like I say, do you do that strictly as a playoff format, or do you maybe do a 30, 40 game schedule that's sort of like after a regular schedule that you would have with all the teams? Like, I don't know, but that's where my thinking eventually got to, where I was like, you have the Super League, and that actually on the top level, and you actually do play some games against the second level, but the games that you play and win in amongst the first level teams are sort of weighted more. It's probably a little more complicated than it should be, but I was just thinking of a way where you have the NBA as it is now, but there's a clear delineation of who is the top and who is the bottom, and you don't have so much of, and you have like I say, you have the relegation factored in, where it means something, and you can't, you don't want to necessarily tank, and the way that you build teams and you maintain success is different than the way that it is in the NBA currently. I don't know. That's just an interesting thing that I thought of, but I like I said, I am interested too in the way that European sports and American sports can influence each other, and if there will be any more cross-pollination that happens. I remember, Josh, you wrote a good piece around the time that Toronto won a couple years ago, and that talked about Adam Silver and his ambitions to extend the game overseas. And there's been talk for a while about having a team in London or elsewhere. And maybe in a generation or two, we may have teams in London and Paris and Barcelona and other type places. So I don't know, if you extend the game in that way, it may change the way that the NBA is ran in a essential way. So, that's something to look forward to, possibly. But anyway, I'm going to send y'all out on that. Some food for the brain. And that's it for this week. As we run once again. We'll be back next week. I don't know if we'll be back on Thursday because I'm planning some watch-along stuff for the NFL draft. That's going to be the first round next Thursday. So if you don't catch us next Thursday, we may be on soon after that. I may do another Sunday show, try to do another Sunday show with maybe a special guest or two. I'm trying to get some special guests back on the show, some new guests as well. So keep up with us as far as that goes. Keep up with everything that we do on WARR Media, on YouTube. This episode will be on YouTube as well if you didn't catch all of it. And of course, our audio on anchor.fm/WARR Media. I'll put that back up on the screen. And our guys here, of course, you can follow them at their tags there. Drew, look at what Drew did. And Mr. Hicks, he don't have his tag up. He don't need the tag up at this point. You know who Josh is, man. No, I'm just playing. But Josh, of course, is out there. How can people follow you?
At Josh M. Hicks Media, both Instagram and Twitter.
Man.
Follow me on those platforms. And be on the lookout for ITS next week. There's Kyle, you mentioned about you're doing the draft thing. Rashad Phillips is coming on the show next week, talking some NBA stuff, especially some of the NBA draft stuff, a little bit of the NBA draft a little bit too, because the draft is coming up in the next couple of weeks, some playoff stuff. It's gonna be some real basketball discussion with a real NBA college scout guru.
Rashad Phillips, man. Some people say he may be running the team one day or something.
Real talk.
Rashad Phillips definitely gets a lot of burn in social media. So if you want to see what he's doing with our man Josh, definitely check out In the Scope next week. But with me too, I'd kind of randomly changed my name on Twitter recently. You can follow me under Means Matters on Twitter now. So if you haven't followed me yet, what you waiting on? I don't know, but You know, if you look up work right, you won't find that anymore. It's now means matters, all lowercase. So that's on Twitter now and IG K meme, of course. But yeah, that's it for now. Though we gonna send you out on that. Unless you guys have anything else you want to throw out there. Yeah. Well, I did shout out though to I want to go back to the sky again right there. Shout out to Lexi. Was it Lexi Brown? D Brown's daughter is now a member of the team, and Josh has another another girl he's gonna be fond of on the team. So he's gonna. How have you been trying to get the? Are you going the season ticket route? Or are you trying to get the official? The official, media crew.
Yeah, we're going I'm trying to go the official route. I've
Okay.
had communication.
That way you can get to the locker room.
Yeah. I've been in touch with the Chicago staff for sure. Obviously talks have been positive. For the most part, they're still trying to figure all those things out, but they know who we are. They know who what we do. So it's looking promising that we'll be in there.
Yeah, I'll add the sky. We're professional. Even Josh. And, we got Chris Pennant too as well. He wasn't on this week, but he'll be back soon. But yeah, we definitely look forward to the sky. And the great thing about the sky too is that with Lori Lightfoot, all controversies aside, did something nice this week. Is announced that, but it's kind of late though with the Bulls and the Hawks. But she announced that they can have fans by the end of the year. But it's only like 7 games left for the Bulls at least, and maybe even less for the Hawks in the regular season. But I guess that means that the Sky will have the whole season where they can accept fans into the arena down there in the South Loop, so Wintrust. So that'll be good for them, and I'll definitely try to hit up some of those games in a professional or less than professional capacity, either way. But if I do it at a less than professional capacity, I may have one of those Chicago, those New Jerseys they have out too, man. I just want to shout those out too. Those are pretty flat, like especially the Windy City or whatever it said, the one with the blue stripe, something like pinstripe.
Yeah.
I rock one of those. So, but, you catch me out this summer in the sky blue. So, especially I'm about to get vaccinated too. So yeah, we gonna be out here this summer, man. For real, enough of this stuff, man. Enough of this indoor stuff. But that's it though for now, Drew, Josh, your man Kyle Means right here. We stay running, and we definitely run in remembrance of all those we've lost and those that we missed. And unfortunately, another unfortunate death came across the wire. News of a young man, Terence Clark, from the Kentucky program, died in a car accident, just 20 years old, and he was possibly going to be drafted this year. And it just makes you think, man, how precious life is, so let's keep on living for those who aren't anymore, and then let's do right, and keep our heads up and stay strong out here, man, and above all, keep bouncing. We'll see y'all next week.